Welcome to the very first episode of The Timeline by the Game Injury Doc, Dr. Evan Jeffries. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. If you don't know, now you know. But every week I'm going to be bringing injury reports after every single game, trying to figure out what the week is going to look like moving forward. What's going to be the problems with the teams, fantasy pickups, things that you need, anybody that watches football, fantasy, or just wants to hear about sports injuries. I'm your guy. This is my very first kind of podcast, show, YouTube, all that kind of good stuff. So we're going to have some fun today. We're going to try to get into it, try to get into some of the major injuries that were impacted, how the teams were affected by it, and how everybody's going to move forward. So welcome, thank you. Please subscribe to my channel. All my social media handles are Game Injury Doc. That's on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you get your social media fix, I'll be there. But let's get into it. So week one, there wasn't a lot of big name injuries, but one that stuck out the most was JK Dobbins. He tore his Achilles, which they kind of knew right away, and that's usually done right away. They'll do a Thompson test, which is basically where they squeeze the calf, and if your foot doesn't plantar flex, then you have no Achilles. So he'll get an MRI to confirm that, but more than likely he's going to need surgery, and you're looking at a timeline of 9 to 12 months. Problem is, J.K. Dobbins has been injured in his first 3 years more than he's really played. He tore his ACL, LCL, and meniscus and missed the whole 2021 season. He then came back last season in 22, but struggled and had to have his knee scoped, which made his season just really difficult from the get go. So he's coming into this season fresh, and unfortunately, he's out for the season in his first game. A lot of times people always talk about injury prone. One thing I always say is the biggest prediction of injury is past injury. And unfortunately, he's had some history in high school, in college, and in the NFL. But moving forward, we're going to be looking at Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. Gus Edwards had about, 8 carries for 32 yards, which is pretty pedestrian. And then even worse, Justice Hill had 8 carries for 9 yards, but he had 2 TDs. So if you're looking for somebody moving forward, you're probably looking at, I would always lean towards the TDs, especially with the way running backs go nowadays. But Lamar Jackson, that's the running back. And he had a pretty not so good game today. He has a new offensive coordinator, which I think will allow him to use the spread offense a little bit more. But look for him to probably get his run game going more like he usually does moving forward. So I'm not buying too much stock in the other two guys. If you needed to pick them up because you need a handcuff, I don't blame you. But there's probably some other guys on the waiver wire, especially receivers, that you can probably get more points from with that. Now, another big injury, which was kind of not talked about too much, but Aaron Jones, he had 127 total yards and 2 TDs. But he left the game with a hamstring injury when he kind of pulled up towards the end of his touchdown and grabbed his left hamstring. Players are always going to say they're going to be all right, but hamstring strains are nothing to really play with. As you can see, Cooper Kupp, he's on the injured reserve. There's a lot of people that have kind of popped up on the injury report going into the season, like Christian Watson, who missed the game one. Romeo Dobbs was on the injury list, and he had a limited snap count today. So hamstring strains, never fun. Soft tissue injuries, never fun. Well, the main reason is because you can aggravate them easily. So if you don't give the proper amount of time to heal, sometimes that's like a recipe for disaster. A.J. Dillon wouldn't be a bad person to have on your roster right now, just in case Aaron Jones has to miss any time due to the hamstring injury. But hopefully he's okay moving forward. But it's always an area of concern when there's a soft tissue injury like that. Mike Williams of the Chargers, a receiver, he left the game briefly for concussion, like kind of testing. He did come back, which is good, and he ended up with 4 catches for 45 yards. But there's always a concern moving forward, just based on sometimes if you get a concussion, you go back in the game, and you pass all the tests. They say it's not a concussion. Symptoms pop up later, and obviously we've seen what happened to Tua last year, but he had a lot of symptoms on the field, but still passed the test. So things like headaches, some dizziness, nausea that can pop up about a day or two later. So that's something to look for moving forward with Mike Williams. So people always take a look at that just to see what the injury report looks like moving forward. Same thing for Tyler Lockett. He was evaluated for a concussion, but did come back. But again, moving forward, you just want to make sure during the injury report during the week that he's looking all good and ready to go for next week. I did take a look at the rookie, Jackson Smith. He had 10 targets, but only 3 catches for 13 yards. But the targets is what we're looking at, right? Targets are always significant. He had 10 of them. He is coming off a hand-wrist injury, which he had a fracture and surgery. So that could be a reason for maybe he wasn't catching it as well. But moving forward, I might be taking Jackson Smith moving forward over Tyler Lockett. The rookie has shown some flashes. We know what he brought in college. So it'd be nice to kind of see what he looks like moving forward. The other people that I want to look at are the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had Pat Firemouth. He had a chest injury. I don't know if that's exactly how you say his last name, but correct me if I'm wrong. And Dionte Johnson, who left the game with a hamstring injury, and he's ruled out pretty fast. Again, the hamstring injury is always going to be a concern. The chest injury, more if he's having bruising, he can wear extra padding and he can be fine probably to go. So I wouldn't be really concerned about the tight end moving forward and playing in week 2, but definitely concerned about Dionte Johnson, the hamstring injury. With hamstring injuries, you always got to look out for, what type of severity is it? Is it a grade 1 strain, a grade 2 strain, a grade 3 strain? A grade 1 strain is basically like little micro tears of the hamstring, and typically it usually takes about 7 to 10 days to heal. But in the NFL you don't have that, so a lot of times a rush back, and then that's when you see the re-aggravation of injuries, especially in the beginning of the season. This is when a lot of these soft tissue injuries happen. It's kind of like we haven't gotten into sprinting. You haven't had any game-like activities like this besides the preseason. So in the first couple of weeks, soft tissue injuries usually pop up pretty frequently. So that's something to watch moving forward. They might give him a little bit more time because they want him to have a longer season, instead of, say, they brought him back next week and he injured his hamstring again and made it a further strain, like a grade 2, which is a partial tear. Then he's more than likely out about 4 to 8 weeks, right? And a grade 3 would be like fully tearing the muscle off the bone, which you don't see too often. But that's something to look out for moving forward. So this was my first show. We're going to kind of get into this every week and take a look at the injuries moving forward. I'm going to try to do recaps on Sunday night and posting them on Monday morning, kind of like Monday morning quarterback, but this will be more like Monday morning timeline, okay? If you guys have any questions, just leave them in the comments. I'll be glad to answer them. I look forward to continuing this journey and kind of talking about NFL injuries. I'm always talking about NBA injuries, so if you know me from the NBA world, that's where a lot of my followers are from. We're going to continue into the NBA arena when the season pops up. For right now, we're focusing mainly on the NFL and might have a few episodes on NBA injury reports kind of going into the season. Looking at players like such as LeBron, who is going into his 21st season, Anthony Davis, who's always having injuries, and other players throughout the league and what that looks like. But this whole show, I'm just happy to do because I want to talk, just to everybody, talk to the public about injuries. That's why I say I always want people to ask me any questions. I want to kind of make it a way for you guys to understand and have a fun time with it. So, welcome to the timeline. Let me know if you have any questions. Peace.